All right, welcome. Just want to do a little follow up. I got a couple questions, which is ironic, but a couple of my friends had questions, and I kind of just want to lay it out, um, you know, on my YouTube channel with my video because I'm going to show this to them anyway. So I thought it'd go well with my last video. There's a link below. Essentially, I proposed some wild trades, starting with Kevin Fiala to the New Jersey Devils for the second overall pick. You're going to have to throw in a sweetener in addition to getting that second round pick. That sweetener could be Gaudreau. We'll get into that. Dumba and Talbot and either a pick or a prospect sending to Anaheim for John Gibson to solidify their goaltending. Gaudreau, the reason he's a good sweetener is he's on a cheap contract, $1.2 million a year. He produces at 0.5 points a game. He was like a 40-ish point. He got above 40 points last season, which is great in an 82 game season. Not sure how many games he played or what his exact stat is, but he's really thrived with Fiala and Boldy, two much younger guys. I think he'd be a great fit in New Jersey with that young core. I think he'd be a good center. Again, as discussed, he can play defense and let his wingers drive up. So the wingers have more offensive freedom than playing a 200-foot game every shift, which can take away from offense just a bit. So I think Gaudreau's a good sweetener. They have Rossi coming up, who should assume the second line center role at some point for Gaudreau. So Gaudreau will either move down to the fourth line or be traded. And that can go either way. The Wild shouldn't have an issue keeping him. They shouldn't have an issue trading him. He's an asset at this point, and he's worth a little more than he was last year. So currently, with the cap buyout penalties, the Wild have $7,388,912 in cap space. They're obviously not going to re-sign Fiala should this trade happen. But Fiala doesn't count against the cap right now because he's unsigned. Gaudreau's up there. You could trade Gaudreau. I have them trading Gaudreau as a sweetener to New Jersey. Again, they might not do that. You can keep Freddie Gaudreau. Obviously, they'll have to replace a fourth line center or something at that point. I threw Lazar's name in there just because, but you have about $1.2 million to fill a fourth line center role, which is very doable in this league. Lazar or fourth line center. I think Lazar would be a steal and a great fit in Minnesota. I don't know if that's going to happen. There's a lot to be determined. That's just me taking a shot in the dark. I think he would fit really well in the system, but that's besides the point. So you can essentially say those will cancel out. If they keep Gaudreau, it doesn't change the cap at all because they're not going to sign a fourth line center. They trade him. They should sign a fourth line center for about the same cost anyway. I have them trading Dumba, frees up $6 million in cap. I have them trading Talbot, $3.66 million in cap saved. Now you're going to have to fill a lot of these holes. I think you signed Fleury as a backup role. I think he signs for 2 years at $3.5 million. He might sign for less, honestly. His age is a factor. He's 37. And if they acquire John Gibson, it's more of a 1A, 1B scenario. Or Fleury's more likely the backup. It's a great backup to have, and you want to pay it accordingly. So I have him signing for $3.5 million. He might sign like a 2-year, $2 million contract. We'll see what happens if he wants to keep playing. All the power to him. I had an issue because it's hard to find a solution in net if you keep Fleury. But Fleury, I feel like at this point has earned that right. If he wants to keep playing, he should keep playing, and he should get paid at least decently. It's not going to be a $7 million contract from last year, but $3.5 million is decent considering the stats he produced last year and his playoff performance. I think it's reasonable, especially at his age. 2-year contract. You got a goaltender in the minor who's coming up. So, it could be less, but my guess is around $3.5 million for a couple of years. You're going to sign Jake Middleton. I split the difference. I said $4.25 million a year annual average value for Middleton. Probably a 3-year bridge deal to get him through the cap buyout penalties. That's for 3 years to beginning this offseason. You're going to acquire Gibson, which would be awesome. $6.4 million signed through 2027. 4 more seasons, so you assume Fleury is the backup for 2 years, Wallstedt as the backup for 2 years. Hopefully Wallstedt's, poised to take over that number one role at that point. Maybe even in Gibson's last year, it's Wallstedt and Gibson kind of splitting the net halfway through the season. That would be cool. Be cool to see Wallstedt come along. We'll see. Goalies can be a little unpredictable. And again, just a fourth line center. Cancels out with Gaudreau. It's the same-ish cost. That leaves him with $3.705 million in cap space. With the roster, you can definitely make some moves. If you need to go out and get, I don't know, maybe a top six winger or something, if Jost isn't working out on the second line, you can trade out Jost. $2 million plus the 3.7, that's $5.7 million you have for a winger. And you have other assets too. You have prospects and you have picks you can always trade out. The Wild haven't done that. Bill Guerin's systems worked well. They haven't needed to do that. They like to retain those picks and develop them into NHL players. And it's really starting to pay dividends with Boldy and Rossi and these young guys coming up. So we'll see. That's kind of how the money works. Kind of wanted to dive into that a little. You're going to have to use up some of the 7.3 if you want to keep either Fiala or Middleton or both. I don't really you have to make some changes if you're going to keep Fiala and Middleton. But then if you make some changes, you're going to have to move out some major money. You're going to have a major hole to fill anyway. So it's where do you want the holes? And, honestly, I think Fiala and Dumba are probably the ones out, mostly because of their contract. They're both going to be hard players to replace. Again, as I said last video, it's long, so don't feel like you have to watch it. There's a lot of discussion. But those are tough guys to fill the role in. If you're going to take a risk, the first year of a $12.7 million buyout, it's a good year to take a risk. You have, at this point, tangible pieces you can continue to trade out. You have young guys you can continue to trade out should you feel the need to compete more. But the cap hit goes up another $2 million next year. I think the cap should go up $1 million, so it should only be an extra $1 million taken away from the overall cap space in comparison to this year. Like the cap buyout penalty increases by $2 million, but the cap ceiling increases by $1 million, leaving you an extra $1 million of penalty. So we'll see what happens. I don't think the Wild should be spending to the cap. I think it's very difficult to maneuver and get things done at the trade deadline. We've obviously seen it. Guys will probably go on the IR at some point. Hopefully not on this team. Hopefully you want them to stay healthy. You want them to mesh and compete. And I think they can get into the playoffs with this roster. But these would be the moves I would make, and they're intriguing. Again, as I said, I don't think Bill Guerin is going to be this aggressive in the offseason. We'll probably see Fiala move. I don't think we'll see Dumba move. We may or may not see Talbot move depending on what his plan for goaltending is. We may see Talbot in Fleury next year. Maybe Fleury signs 3.5, splits the net with Talbot. I think that's a hole they kind of need to figure out. I think Gibson would just solidify that at least for the next 4 years while you're waiting for your prime goaltending prospect to come up. We'll see. We'll see what Bill Guerin has in store. This is what I would do. And again, Gaudreau, kind of a wild card. Could stay, could go. Great sweetener for a potential New Jersey trade, for example. Just like the ideal fit for Freddie Gaudreau at this point is on a young New Jersey team. I feel like he would thrive there. He's already thriving in Minnesota. I think he'll do well in New Jersey too. So we'll see. Cheap player for New Jersey to add as well. So that's kind of everything laid out again. I know I'm being a little redundant right now, so I apologize, but I'm excited. I think there's a lot you can do with this Wild team. And to an extent, they're going to be competitive regardless of what you do, whether you make these moves or not, or who you sign, who you don't sign. I think they're very well built, and they have the depth in the minors to compete, which is exciting because when they bought out Parise and Suter, I was not expecting this team to make the playoffs these 3 years. I was wrong. It looks like they should be able to compete for the playoffs, even with losing 3 of your main guys. Talbot was an all-star last year. Fiala, point-per-game player. Dumba, a premier defenseman in this league. Excellent defensive defenseman and can provide some offense. Great skater, incredible locker room guy. These are three pieces. You look at, like, say, last year in the offseason, you couldn't really see these guys going. But it's at that point. We'll see what Bill Guerin has to say about it. I know Guerin's very against trading Dumba, and I get why. But you also have to look at it from a business perspective. There's a reason there's a lot of speculation about Dumba's contract being moved. There's a lot of reason for speculation that Fiala's contract's going to get moved. So we'll see. Enjoy. Comment. Roast me if you want. That'd be cool. But I was making this anyway for my my buddy. I wanted to show him a couple of my buddies, and yeah, just a little more explanation. Appreciate you guys watching, though. Take care, all right?